I was called the prodigal, and this is my story. The air in my father's house had become a weight I could no longer carry. It smelled of old parchment, expensive olive oil, and the suffocating scent of settled lives. I stood in the courtyard, watching my older brother count the rows of grain with a face as hard as a millstone. He was a man of maps and ledgers, while my heart was a wild thing, pacing behind the ribs of tradition. I wanted the horizon. I wanted the heat of a distant sun that didn't rise over my father's fields. When I finally spoke the words, asking for my share of the estate while my father was still breathing, the silence that followed was sharper than a butcher's knife. It was a legal request, but a moral execution. I was telling him I wished he were dead so I could have his silver. He didn't scream. He didn't even tremble. He simply looked at me with eyes that seemed to see the shipwreck I was about to become, and he handed me the heavy leather bags of coins. The first few months were a blur of gold and silk. In the far country, the air smelled like expensive perfume and spilled wine. I was a king among strangers. My internal dialogue was a constant, arrogant hum. I was right. They were stagnant, and I am alive. Look at the friends who hang on my every word. Look at the way the light catches the jewels on my fingers. I spent silver like it was sand. I bought laughter, I bought company, and I bought the illusion that I was finally my own master. But the far country has a way of turning cold the moment your pockets go light. The famine didn't start in the fields. It started in the silence of my room when the last coin clinked against the floor and my friends vanished like mist at sunrise. Soon, the silk was replaced by rags that smelled of wood smoke and failure. I found myself standing in a field that felt like the edge of the world, staring at a trough of pods. The pigs grunted and shoved, their muddy flanks pressing against my legs. The smell was unbearable, a thick, wet stench of manure and rot. I reached down and grabbed a handful of the husks they were eating, my stomach cramping so hard it felt like it was trying to fold in on itself. I looked at the pigs and realized they were eating better than a son of the house of Israel. My pride, which had been a towering wall, began to crumble into the mud. Even my father's hired servants have bread to spare, I whispered to the empty air, and here I am, dying of hunger. The journey back was a slow, agonizing crawl. My sandals had long since fallen apart, and the soles of my feet were a mass of blisters and grit. Every step was a debate. He'll turn you away. He should turn you away. You aren't a son anymore. You're a ghost of a mistake. I practiced my speech until the words were smooth as river stones in my mouth. Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. I didn't want the robe. I just wanted the scraps from the kitchen. I didn't want the ring. I just wanted a corner of the barn where the wind wouldn't bite so hard. I was still a long way off when I saw a figure on the porch. The sun was setting, casting long purple shadows across the road. I stopped, my breath catching in my throat, ready to turn and run back to the pigs. But then the figure moved. My father, a man of dignity, a man who never moved faster than a measured walk, began to run. I saw his robes flying behind him, his gray hair catching the light. He didn't wait for me to reach the gate. He didn't wait for the speech I had spent weeks rehearsing. He threw his arms around my neck, and the smell of him, the familiar scent of cedar and home, hit me like a physical blow. I tried to start my confession, but he buried his face in my neck, his tears hot against my skin. He didn't look at the filth on my clothes. He didn't ask where the silver had gone. He shouted for the best robe, for the ring that carried the family seal, and for the fatted calf. He wasn't just welcoming a traveler. He was resurrecting a son. My internal monologue, which had been a scream of unworthy, was silenced by the simple, heavy weight of his hand on my shoulder. I realized then that I had gone to the far country to find freedom, but I had only found it when I surrendered to the love I had tried to outrun. As the music started and the house filled with the smell of the feast, I sat in the circle of light, the gold ring cold and solid on my finger. I looked out the window toward the fields where my brother still stood in the dark, his heart as far away as mine had once been. I understood then that being a son isn't about the work you do or the rules you keep. It's about the Father you belong to. We all wander into the far country of our own making, thinking we can trade our identity for a moment of independence. But the road home is always shorter than we think, because the one we are running from is already running toward us. The scripture reference is Luke 15:11-32,